It's the old school Blackfire summer vest reppin'. What's up guys, welcome back to another classic Think Tank Thursday Parkour Journeys episode. Today we're going to be talking about why every jump is worth your time. So this saying is born out of a joke from my friend Josh from years back when he saw this jump that was like not, you know, he'd passed that level and like someone was like, oh, we could try that, and he was like, mate, that's not even worth my time. And obviously that was really funny at the time, but it represents a really important principle that I want to talk about today. So when you start in parkour, you tend to pretty much just take on every jump that you can get your teeth into, right? You want it, you just a huge amount of variety, and you're jumping into every challenge that you can get your hands on. But what tends to happen, and this definitely happened to me earlier on in my parkour career, was that once you hit like an intermediate sort of level where like certain jumps you don't really do anymore because you've passed that sort of level, and you've got your eyes on bigger things. You're looking for the biggest jump, you're looking for the best jump, you're looking for the biggest Kong Pre, the biggest cat leap, the biggest 180, you're looking for the biggest things that you can do. You tend to get into this weird headspace where you're a lot more progress driven than you are sort of creativity and skill, finesse driven. And I think it's really important to keep an eye on these distinctions, because yes, it's so important to hammer out your biggest jumps and it's so important to push that comfort zone, but the little details in all of your lines and all of your jumps are what makes things a lot more subtle than you may realize. And it's what makes parkour more of an art form, in that every little detail matters. So what will tend to happen is that someone will be like, oh, let's do this challenge, and then you look at it and like immediately you're like, that's not something I do, that's not something I'm working on, that's below my level. And it might be something that it tends to be something that's like quite technical, and maybe it is the case that you could do it maybe sort of not well, or you could do it, but it's not really what you're focusing on. You want to get that bigger jump, you're looking for that huge standing pre or whatever it is. But then what will tend to happen is that little technical bit, like jumping to a diagonal rail, for example, or like, you know, doing a little step up tic tac off a rail. You might not take on that first challenge because you could do it and it would be easy for you. But then what tends to happen is that those technical pieces, they can be developed into much, much bigger, more complex moves later on down the line. But if you're constantly only ever looking for the biggest Kong Pre, the biggest running Pre, you're gonna miss out on a wealth of technique that is gonna be a huge, huge blind spot for you later on down the line. So you'll be at a certain level with like a massive running Pre, but then like if you've got a rail Pre challenge, for example, and you've like shied away from, or not necessarily shied away, but when there's been smaller ones that look like they're not worth your time because you can jump way further than that, you haven't been there dialing in the technique that you needed to then go and do the bigger version of that, the proper version of that. So you can start to see where little holes can form in your movement just because you're more caught up in the idea of doing your biggest, bestest version of everything. And this is why building lines is so important, and why this movement in parkour has been so good for the community, because a lot of people are a lot more focused now on the minute details, the connections, the steps, the little pieces that can connect together the big jumps that make the whole line way better. So line building is such an important part of this, and it's eliminated quite a lot of it. But I just want to stress that it's super important that you don't just think about the linear moves, and you give every challenge its due. Even if it looks like it's a bit easy for you, just make sure that you can do it, and make sure you can do it well, because it's an idea that you didn't see, it's an idea that you didn't think of, or you poo-pooed or dismissed it because you thought you were too good for it. But later down the line, this leaves, like I was saying, just quite big holes in your movement, and you'll tend to ignore when someone else has progressed that and just kind of be like, oh, that's not my style, that's not what I do. But you're leaving so much on the table if you do that, and it will be a massive hindrance to what your movement could be and what it should be. Everyone loves doing their biggest jump, don't get me wrong, it's like an amazing thing to push yourself out of that comfort zone, but there are so many different pockets of comfort zone that you want to explore, And it's just such a shame to leave that breadth and depth of parkour out. And you might not appreciate it until you've maxed out your biggest jumps everywhere and you're like, okay, I can't learn anything more, because you've hit that plateau. And this is another thing, you will glide through plateaus by introducing more variety to your training, because when you learn something in one area, even if it's nothing to do with something else, it still contributes to your overall bodily awareness and bodily function and mind-body connection, that it makes stuff that may not look like it's to do with it a lot better by sort of association, right? So this is why every single jump is worth your time, and you want to make sure that all those little details, all those little techie challenges that look like they're for people who can't quite jump as far, why they're actually incredibly interesting. And they're gonna spark your creativity as well. This is another point that isn't even to do with your physical ability. It's like you're blind to different challenges because you haven't undergone the little versions of things that you consider too easy, and then it stumps your creativity down the line because you're just like, oh, all I see everywhere is plyos and all I see everywhere is cat leaps, when actually there's a plethora of movement out there that is not anything to do with those, and they're all part of parkour, and they flourish in your mind, and then you put them all together in lines, and it becomes this beautiful thing. But if you shut off any part of it, if you're blind to any part of it, then you're leaving good stuff on the table. So I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of that, and just make sure that ego isn't getting in the way. Pay full attention to all the details, take on all the challenges that you can, humble yourself, and just, even if it doesn't look like it's worth your time, go for it. Give it a go. Make sure you can do it. Make sure you can do it really well. Even if it's something that you wouldn't normally do and you're like, oh, that's kind of lame or whatever. It's like, get that out of your mind. Get those limitations out of your mind. It is a limitation when you decide that something isn't worth your time, or that it's not cool, or it's not quite what you enjoy doing in parkour. Find out that you're not just limiting yourself in your mind. And then eventually, if you're like, yeah, I really just don't enjoy this, that's fine too, but don't never try it because of your preconceived ideas and notions about it. Yeah, so that's it for this week's episode. I really hope you enjoyed this quick Think Tank Thursday Parkour Journeys episode. We're going to be bringing you these every single week, so make sure you subscribe. I really hope you got something from this, guys. It is my absolute passion to bring you the experience that I've gained from 12 years of parkour, and to share as much knowledge as I can and help the community grow and flourish in a positive way. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next week. Big love.